Welcome back, and a very special welcome to our next guest. He was the first U.S. social scientist allowed into communist China, where he learned about the horrors of the CCP's one child policy. He's ever since been one of the Chinese Communists' most vociferous, knowledgeable, and impactful critics. His name is Stephen Mosher. He's the founder and president of the Population Research Institute and the author of Bully of Asia: Why China's Dream is the New Threat to World Order. Steve Mosher, it's very good to have you back. You are also a member of our Committee on the Present Danger of China, and we're delighted always to have a chance to visit with you.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Frank, and the committee does very, very important work, especially at this juncture in history, which I think is critical.
It is critical indeed. And I'm going to suggest respectfully, you may need a new edition of your book because Bully of Asia doesn't seem to describe the bullying that China is about and its ambitions. And let me ask you just to sort of set the stage for this conversation by talking a little bit about China's dream as Xi Jinping envisions it and why it really is the world's nightmare.
Well, it is, Frank, and let me tell you, you'll be happy to learn that in March, which is just a few weeks ago, Regnery Press published a new edition of Bully of Asia, updated, uh, talking about China's more expansive dream of dominating the world. But I tried to do that 25 years ago in a book called Hegemon, the subtitle of which was China's Plan to Dominate Asia and the World. And I was roundly mocked in the China watching world by all but a few people who said, well, no, China just wants to tweak the world order. It may just want a few islands in the South China Sea. We may have to give it Taiwan, but its ambitions are limited. Do not be afraid of China. We will integrate it into the world order. Well, how
Right.
has that
If only we engage with them, right?
yeah,
And
we
enrich them
simply
and
engage.
empower them.
We compromise, we compromise, we compromise until they're happy. Well, unfortunately, they're never happy. Unfortunately, China's dream, Xi Jinping's dream, is to be the single sole axis of power in the world, the single dominant superpower. And this comes from long ago in Chinese history. China, 25 years ago, 2,500 years ago, 2,500 years ago, had a war of all against all. It wound up with a single totalitarian state called the Qin Empire. Qin, of course, is where we get the word China from. And its goal, it understands that international relations are uncertain and that the only way to assure your security is by being the sole dominant power on the planet. And that's what they're aiming for. And we need to be very, very clear about that.
And basically enslaving everybody else, I think, is the
Oh, absolutely.
corollary, of
Look,
course.
the world.
But Steve, I mean, your prescience on this matter and the degree to which you were mocked and ridiculed and chastised for it is one of the reasons why we value so much what you are saying now is happening clearly, and yet there is this persistent effort to say, no, 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 we still need to engage, particularly people on Wall Street are determined to pour our money into the Chinese Communist coffers, which can only make matters infinitely worse, my fear is. Let me ask you about something else you've been specifically warning of, and that is how China is jujitsuing, if I can use that expression, this conflict that Russia is now in into a dominant position vis-a-vis Russia, as well as a partnership that can presumably, in their view, set the stage for their dominance of not just Asia but Eurasia more broadly.
Well, as usual, China is playing a double game here. I believe they encourage Vladimir Putin to go into Ukraine. They encourage him in several ways and for several reasons. One reason is they thought Ukraine would be the invasion of Ukraine would be a model for their invasion of Taiwan, in the sense that they could see the world's reaction, the West's reaction, and I think they've been happy about that reaction because the United States and the West, largely defined, has imposed sanctions on Russia. But Russia's economy is going to shrink by no more than a manageable 10% this year. The ruble is already back to pre war exchange levels. So I think China has been emboldened by that, by the fact that the rest of the world, Latin America, Africa, the rest of Asia, is sitting this one out, as it were. And of course, they signed a 5,000 word agreement with China, pledging eternal friendship right before the invasion began. 5,000 word agreements don't get negotiated overnight. This was months in the making. 15 different trade agreements, including an agreement to buy oil and natural gas. People say, well, you can't get the gas and the oil from from Western Russia, Eurasian Russia, back to China. Well, they're laying pipeline right now, Frank. They will have completed in a couple of years. They're building the pipeline at breakneck speed, which of course is something we could learn from them on in building pipelines in this country. So I think
Indeed. They're also getting access, I gather, to a lot of Russian wheat as well. Is that
Russian
right?
wheat, another strategic resource. China planted late this year, and there are problems with the increase in the price of fertilizer in China. So China is already has been in the last couple of years in a situation of food shortage. You go to a restaurant in China, you have 10 people for dinner. They only serve you 9 persons worth of food. That's according to an order from Xi Jinping himself. So if the supreme leader says, be careful about how much you eat, don't leave anything on your plate, you know that there's a shortage in China. They're arresting people in charge of the wheat and grain silos for stealing. I mean, there's all kinds of evidence that there's a food shortage in China and that the wheat from Russia is going to help to make up for that. So, another strategic resource. But look at the big picture. The big picture is China wants to dominate the world. It has the population. It now has, thanks to Wall Street and the stealing of US technology, has the industrial base to do that. What it lacks is secure access to raw materials. That's what Russia provides. It provides the oil and natural gas, the energy. It provides the raw materials, the wheat, and the other resources, that minerals that Russia can send to China to build up its military machine, to build up its economy. So together, you have Harold Mackinder's dream come to life. Whoever dominates, Eurasia, the world island, dominates the world, and we are now in a situation where we are forcing Russia into China's arms, and I think that's a grave strategic mistake.
Yeah. Well, we certainly find them in each other's arms, whether we're responsible for it or whether the Chinese have engineered it. But the danger that you've pointed to, I think, is absolutely indisputable at this point, and that is that they're jointly a vastly more dangerous problem for the free world, not just us, but the free world. And I'm fearful that, uh, as we've seen in some cases already, Steve Mosher, people will begin accommodating to this new world order, if you will, and the power that flows from it with separate pieces. We're going to take a quick break with our conversation with Stephen Mosher, uh, fantastic resource on China, author of The Bully of Asia, right after this.